I, 34 male, am a public school teacher in Ohio. 7th grade history. I coach the junior varsity debate team, run an after-school program for kids who don't have anywhere safe to go after 3 o'clock, and I make $52,000 a year doing it. I drive a 2017 Honda Civic with a cracked dashboard, and I bring my lunch to work in a bag my mom gave me. And until about 8 months ago, I thought the woman I was building a life with was okay with all of that. She wasn't. My girlfriend and I had been together for 2 years when the cracks started showing. Not small hairline cracks. The kind that run floor to ceiling, and you only notice them after the wall has already shifted 3 inches. It started at her friend's birthday dinner. Rooftop restaurant downtown. The kind of place where cocktails cost $16 and everyone's dressed like they're about to close a real estate deal. Her friend group was finance people, marketing directors, a guy who wouldn't stop mentioning his Tesla. I wore a blazer. I thought that was fine. It wasn't fine. Not to her. On the drive home, she was quiet for about 4 minutes. Then, you told them you were a teacher. Because I am a teacher. You could have said you work in education administration. Or curriculum development. Something that sounds more, she paused. Professional. I looked at her. Teaching 7th grade history is professional. She made a sound. Not quite a word. Just a sound that communicated exactly what she thought of 7th grade history. I let it go. I shouldn't have. But I loved her, and she had a way of making me feel like the argument wasn't worth it, like I was being oversensitive. That's a skill. Not a good one, but a skill. It happened again, 2 weeks later. We ran into a colleague of hers at the grocery store, and she introduced me as someone who works with kids. Not as her boyfriend. Not as a teacher. Works with kids. Like I was a babysitter. When I brought it up later, she said I was misremembering. Said she'd introduced me as her boyfriend. Said I was insecure and projecting. I started keeping mental notes. 3rd time was at Sunday dinner with her parents. Her mother asked what I did for work, and before I could open my mouth, my girlfriend said, "He's transitioning into something else soon." Cool and casual and a complete fabrication. I put my fork down. I'm a public school teacher, I said, looking directly at her mother. 7th grade American history. 9 years. I love it. Her mother smiled genuinely. My brother was a teacher. It's hard work. The car ride home was ice cold. 37 minutes of silence until she finally said, "You embarrassed me." How? I was setting up a narrative. That you're ambitious. That you're going somewhere. I can't keep introducing you as a teacher. It sounds like you peaked. There it was. Out in the open. She thought standing in front of 30 kids every day teaching them about the Civil War and the New Deal was the professional equivalent of giving up. I'm proud of what I do, I said. She rolled her eyes. Actually rolled them. Like I was a child who didn't understand how the world worked. That's sweet, she said, and the word sweet had never sounded more condescending in my entire life. I didn't break up with her that night. I told myself she was stressed. I told myself everyone has complicated feelings about status and appearances. I told myself a lot of things people tell themselves when they're not ready to see what's directly in front of them. About 3 weeks later, a colleague of mine at school pulled me aside between periods. She had the careful look on her face. The kind people wear when they've been debating saying something for days. I don't want to get in your business, she said. But I thought you should know. She showed me a screenshot. A group chat. My girlfriend's name at the top. My girlfriend had texted her friends, honestly considering telling people he got laid off just so I don't have to explain the teacher thing anymore. Is that terrible? LOL. One friend. Honestly? Yes, but also kind of genius. Another. Just tell him to say he's in education consulting. Problem solved. I stood in that hallway for a long moment. Kids walking past. Someone knocked into my shoulder and apologized. The bell rang. Thank you for showing me, I said. I went to my classroom. Sat at my desk for about 4 minutes. Then I taught 4th period. Because that's what you do. You show up. But something shifted. I wasn't making excuses for her anymore. That same week, I submitted my application for Ohio State Teacher of the Year. My principal had been pushing me to apply for 2 years, and I'd finally done it mostly to get her off my back. I didn't think I'd actually get it. I didn't tell my girlfriend I applied. Not out of secrecy. I just knew what she'd say. I could already hear the tone. Life went on. She kept up the routine. The comments, the redirections, the subtle erosions. She told her coworker at a happy hour that I dabbled in education and was exploring other options. I was standing right there. Then she escalated in a way I didn't anticipate. She sat me down and laid out what she called a practical conversation. She had a list, printed, on paper. The list included reasons I should consider leaving teaching, salary comparisons pulled from LinkedIn, a paragraph about how her friends' husbands were in finance and tech, and it reflected on her at professional events, and an actual printed job listing for a corporate training position at a pharmaceutical company. She slid it across the table like a business proposal. "I've done the research," she said. "You'd make $90,000 starting. Almost double what you make now." I know what I make. Then you know this is the logical next step. For who? For us. For where we're going. I picked up the papers, stacked them neatly, and handed them back. "I'm not leaving teaching," I said. She tried a different angle. Told me her parents were asking questions. That her father had made comments about financial stability. That she was protecting me by steering these conversations. She reframed every act of manipulation as an act of care, and she did it so fluidly that for half a second, I almost questioned myself. Half a second. Then it passed. "You told people I was laid off," I said quietly. Silence. I saw the screenshot. The group chat. Her expression didn't collapse. It recalibrated. Shifted from warm concern to cold offense in under 2 seconds. I was venting to my friends. People vent. "You were planning to tell people I lost my job, so you didn't have to explain what I actually do. That's not venting. That's deciding I'm something to manage. You're being dramatic. I want you to leave tonight. I need space to think." She left. But not before telling me I was throwing away something good over my ego. That not every woman was going to tolerate my stubbornness about this teacher thing. The door closed. I sat with it. The next 2 weeks were a specific kind of uncomfortable. She cycled through tactics like someone flipping channels. First it was guilt. Long structured text paragraphs about how a relationship is a team effort, and I wasn't considering her perspective. I read them. I didn't respond the way she wanted. "I hear you. I'm still not leaving teaching." Then the silent treatment. 3 days of clipped one-word responses designed to make you chase. I didn't chase. Then she called my mother. My mother called me immediately. After, sounding confused. My girlfriend had apparently framed it as a concerned check-in, telling my mother she was worried about my career trajectory and hoped my mother might have a conversation with me about being more open to opportunities. My mother had listened politely, said she'd pass it along, hung up, and then called me to say, "Who does this woman think she's talking to?" I laughed for the first time in weeks. "She called you?" I said. "She called me," my mother confirmed, "to tell me my son needs a new job." What my mother knew, and what I hadn't told my girlfriend, was that I'd received a letter from the Ohio Department of Education 2 weeks earlier. I had made it to the final round of consideration for Ohio State Teacher of the Year. 5 finalists in the entire state. I'd told my principal. I'd told my mother after swearing her to silence. I hadn't told my girlfriend. Some part of me needed to know who she was when there was nothing impressive on the table. When I was just a teacher in a Honda Civic who brought his lunch to work. That part of me had gotten its answer. She made her final move on a Thursday night. She came over, sat across from me at the kitchen table, and said she'd been doing a lot of thinking. "I've been unfair to you," she said. "I've let my own insecurities affect how I treated you, and I'm sorry for that." "I appreciate that," I said. "I've already told my friends that you're a teacher and that you love it and that I'm proud of you." "What changed?" She hesitated for just a fraction of a second. I realized I was wrong. "Did something happen?" "No, I've been doing a lot of reflecting." I looked at her. "Or did someone in your friend group tell you something that made me look more professional?" Her expression shifted slightly. Here's what had happened. One of her friends had run into my colleague at a gym. My colleague, not knowing the connection, mentioned I was a finalist for State Teacher of the Year. Word got back to my girlfriend within hours. I knew because my colleague texted me, "I think I accidentally told someone in your girlfriend's circle about the award thing." She seemed weirdly excited. So the apology wasn't an apology. It was a repositioning. She'd caught wind that I might be about to become impressive by her metrics, and she was moving to get back on the right side of it. "I found out you're a finalist," she said, dropping the pretense, "for the state award. And I think that's incredible. So now it's okay to be a teacher." You told people I got laid off. You printed job listings and handed them to me like homework. You called my mother. And now that there might be an award with the governor's name on it, suddenly you're proud. I've grown. "I need your key," I said. She stood up slowly, set the key on the table with deliberate care. At the door, she turned around. "When you win," she said, "you're going to wish you had someone to celebrate with." "I have plenty of people," I said. The door closed. This time it felt final, like a window being sealed shut against weather. 6 weeks later, the Ohio Department of Education called me on a Wednesday morning while I was in the parking lot eating a granola bar before first period. I almost didn't answer because I didn't recognize the Columbus area code. I won. Ohio State Teacher of the Year. Press conference with the governor. Profile in 3 state newspapers. I sat in my car for a moment after she hung up, the granola bar wrapper in my hand, the cracked dashboard in front of me, the school building through the windshield, kids filing in through the front doors. Then I went inside and taught first period. I told my students at the end of class almost as an afterthought. The kid in the back row, who never showed emotion about anything, pumped his fist. Another one started clapping, and the whole class joined in. I had to tell them to quiet down before the class next door thought something had happened. Best moment I'd had in years. The press conference was 2 weeks later. The governor stood at a podium in the state capitol and mentioned me by name. Talked about my after-school program. Talked about my debate team, which had placed second at the state championship that spring. Said teachers like me were the reason public education still worked in this country. A photographer caught me shaking the governor's hand. The photo ran in 4 outlets: Columbus Dispatch, Cleveland.com, Toledo Blade, a local news segment that got picked up regionally. My phone was loud for 3 days. And then, through the mutual friend network that still occasionally reached me, I found out that one of my ex-girlfriend's friends had sent her the Columbus Dispatch article with a screenshot of the governor's quote. No message, just the article. Then 2 more friends sent it. Then someone posted it in their group chat. The same one where she joked about telling people I was laid off. I wasn't there for it. I didn't need to be. But I heard she went quiet for the rest of that evening. Just read receipts going blue one after another. I want to be honest about what happened next because this is where the story gets interesting. 2 days after the press conference, the district superintendent came to my classroom while I was stacking chairs after school. She offered me a newly created role, lead curriculum developer for the district's history program. Stipend on top of my current salary. I'd mentor new teachers and help design curriculum, but key my class. The stipend was $18,000 a year on top of my existing salary. $70,000 total. Not finance money. Not Tesla money. But real money I earned doing exactly what I'd always done. I accepted. 5 weeks after the press conference, my ex-girlfriend texted me. "I've been thinking about you. Saw the article. I'm really proud of what you've accomplished. I was wondering if we could talk." I responded, "I don't think that's a good idea. I hope you're well." She responded within 4 minutes. "I understand. I just want you to know I'm genuinely sorry. Not because of the award. I was wrong about a lot of things." The preemptive denial was particularly well crafted. She knew exactly what I was thinking and addressed it directly to disarm it. I didn't respond. She texted again the next morning with therapy language about projecting insecurities and doing work on herself. Still no response from me. Then she showed up at my school. Not in my classroom. The front office has protocols. But she was in the parking lot at 4:15 when I walked out. standing next to my Honda Civic with a coffee cup in her hand, like this was completely normal. "I just want 5 minutes," she said.
"This isn't appropriate," I said.
"I know. I needed you to hear me. I don't have anything I need to hear from you. I made a serious mistake. I let my own stuff get in the way of seeing who you actually are. I heard you the first time. Then why won't you?" "Because sorry doesn't change what you did," I said, keeping my voice level. "You spent months trying to make me ashamed of my work. You told people I was laid off. You called my mother. You handed me a job listing like I was a project to be fixed. That's not insecurity. That's contempt. And I'm not interested in rehabilitating this." She stared at me. The controlled surface cracked. "You know what your problem is? You love the narrative of being the humble teacher more than you love actual people." That was the real her, right there. When the apology script ran out. "Have a safe drive home," I said. I got in my car and drove to my mother's house for dinner. I thought that was the end of it. It wasn't. 2 weeks later, I started hearing through the mutual friend network that she was rewriting history. The story she was telling her circle had shifted. Now she was the one who'd always believed in me, who'd supported me, who'd been there during the hard years before the award. And then she reached out to the local lifestyle journalist who had written a warm profile of me after the award. She pitched herself as my longtime girlfriend who wanted to share the personal side of the journey. A follow-up human interest piece. The woman behind the teacher. The journalist emailed me first to verify. I called the journalist directly. I was professional and calm. I told her my ex-girlfriend and I had separated before the press conference, that she had no involvement in my work or my journey, and that I had documentation of communications that directly contradicted the narrative being offered. The journalist killed the pitch immediately. But here's where things got really interesting. My ex-girlfriend worked at a mid-sized marketing firm. Her firm had recently put in a bid to handle communications for the Ohio Department of Education's public awareness campaign connected to the exact initiative my award was tied to. I found this out because the department's communications director called me asking if I'd be willing to consult informally on how the campaign messaging should feel to working teachers. Whether it was authentic. Whether it would land. I said yes. 3 meetings in, the communications director mentioned they were still evaluating vendor proposals. She named 4 firms. The third one was my ex-girlfriend's firm. I didn't say anything negative about her firm. Not one word. What I did was provide honest, specific, detailed feedback about what authentic communication looks like in education contexts. I talked about what resonates with teachers and what feels like corporate messaging dressed up in education language. I was thorough. I was credible. I was the state teacher of the year, and they were paying attention to every word. The department chose a different firm. A smaller one with more education-specific experience. The decision was documented, justified, and made by committee. Her firm lost the contract. A contract I learned later that she had personally championed internally and had told her team they were going to win. I won't pretend I felt nothing when I heard that. I did. Not pride exactly. More like equilibrium. Like the scales had quietly leveled on their own. She never connected it to me.
How could she?
I'd never said her firm's name out loud in that room. I'd just done my job well. The same way I always had. Then came the final piece. She applied for a senior communications director role at a nonprofit focused on K-12 education advocacy. The nonprofit's executive director was someone I'd met twice at state education events. He emailed me asking if I knew her since she'd listed our relationship as a professional reference. She'd calculated that my name post-award was worth using. That despite everything I'd be too professional or too passive or too sweet to say anything that hurt her. I responded to the executive director honestly. I told him we'd had a personal relationship that ended. I told him I couldn't speak to her professional qualifications. I told him that in my personal experience, she had expressed significant reservations about public school teachers and the value of public education as a career, and that given the mission of his organization, he might want to consider whether that alignment was there. That was all I said.
She didn't get the job.
I found out through the mutual friend network. By that point, I wasn't tracking her. But when it came through, I sat with it for a moment. Felt it land. then moved on. There's a version of the story where I feel guilty about that reference call. I've turned it over. Here's where I land. I told the truth. I didn't fabricate anything. I didn't exaggerate. A hiring manager directly asked me for my honest assessment of someone applying to advocate for public school teachers who had spent 2 years treating public school teaching like something to be hidden. I gave him accurate information. What he did with it was his decision. She spent months trying to rewrite who I was. I simply declined to rewrite who she was. My classroom still has the same chipped desks and dry erase marker smell. The curriculum development role settled into a rhythm. My debate kids made it to regionals. The after-school program added 2 new volunteer mentors, both former SD.